You meet someone new. The conversation flows. They are charming, intelligent, emotionally available, and within the first hour you have already seen the ending. Not because you are pessimistic, not because you are damaged, but because your mind has already mapped the architecture of who they are, traced the invisible lines of their wounds and patterns and unspoken loyalties, and calculated with devastating accuracy where this connection will break. You do not want to know this, you would give anything not to know this, but you are a seer, and the seer's gift is also the seer's curse. This video is about why knowing too much makes love impossible. Welcome to Power and Myth. The Sigma INFJ Seer does not choose isolation because they fear intimacy. They choose it because intimacy, as most people experience it, is the slow unfolding of revelation, the gradual unveiling, the joy of discovery. And for the seer, there is no discovery, there is only confirmation. What Jung identified as introverted intuition, operating at full capacity, the ancients understood as prophecy. This is not mysticism, this is pattern completion. Unconscious synthesis. Your brain processes thousands of data points beneath conscious awareness and delivers complete knowing before the other person has finished their second sentence. You see the affair they will have in 3 years because you have already registered the way they talk about their marriage. You see the betrayal because you clocked the moment their eyes shifted when honesty became inconvenient. You see the abandonment because you felt the specific quality of their attention, and you know with the certainty that comes from having lived this pattern 100 times before that this quality does not sustain. And the truly unbearable part? You cannot explain how you know. There is no evidence yet. The relationship has not had time to rot. From the outside, everything is perfect, but you have already attended the funeral. You cannot unsee what has been seen. This is the seer's inheritance. Cassandra was not cursed because she could see the future. She was cursed because no one believed her. The Sigma, the first INFJ Seer, carries both curses at once. You know, and you are alone in your knowing. Most people fall in love through revelation. Each date, each conversation, each vulnerable disclosure brings new information. The other person slowly comes into focus. Mystery dissolves into intimacy. For the seer, the process is inverted. The person is mapped immediately, and then you spend months, sometimes years, watching them slowly reveal to themselves what you saw in the first meeting. You are not falling in love. You are watching someone perform their personality whilst you wait for the self beneath to emerge. And it does emerge, eventually, always. But by the time they arrive at the honesty you perceived at the beginning, you are already exhausted. You have been in a relationship with their future self whilst they were still pretending to be their performed self. You loved the person they would become, but they are not there yet, and the gap between who they are and who you saw they could be becomes unbearable. This is why the seer so often loves potential rather than presence. You do not fall for who someone is. You fall for the architecture of who they might become if they did the work, faced the shadow, chose the harder path. And then you are devastated when they do not choose it, but you are not disappointed in them. You are disappointed in your own knowing because you saw the path and you wanted, desperately, to be wrong. The shadow of the seer is this: relationship becomes an intellectual exercise. You are solving a person rather than meeting them. Presence becomes impossible because you are always 3 moves ahead. The person across from you is speaking about their childhood, and you are already in the future, watching the specific way this wound will express itself when they are triggered, calculating whether you have the capacity to hold it, predicting the fight you will have in 8 months when this unresolved pain surfaces. You are not listening to be with them, you are listening to map them, and they feel it, not consciously, but they feel the quality of your attention. They feel that you are not discovering them, you are diagnosing them. They feel that you already know the punchline to the story they are halfway through telling, and it makes them uneasy, because people want to be seen, yes, but they do not want to be predicted. They do not want to feel like a case study. They want the spaciousness of not being known yet, the freedom to still surprise. And the seer, with their devastating accuracy, removes that spaciousness. You do not mean to, but your knowing is so complete, so immediate, that there is no room left for the other person to unfold naturally. They feel rushed, forced, as though they must catch up to your understanding of them before they have had time to understand themselves. And so they pull away, not because you were wrong, but because you were right too quickly. The Sigma INFJ Seer is often accused of being cold, detached, unavailable, but the truth is more complicated. You are not withholding yourself out of fear. You are withholding yourself because you have already seen how this ends, and you are trying to protect both of you from the slow violence of a connection that cannot sustain its own weight. You ghost, you door slam, you withdraw so completely that the other person is left confused, wondering what they did wrong, and the answer is nothing. They did nothing wrong. You reach the part of the film where you knew the relationship would collapse, and rather than sit through the remaining scenes, you left the theatre. This is not cruelty. This is exhaustion. The exhaustion of loving someone whilst knowing, with absolute certainty, that love will not be enough. The seer does not fear intimacy. The seer fears the inevitability they have already perceived. And here is the truly isolating part. You cannot explain this to anyone who is not also a seer. When you try to articulate why you ended a relationship that seemed fine, people think you are self-sabotaging. They think you are creating problems that do not exist. They tell you that you are overthinking, that you need to give people a chance, that you are too picky, too guarded, too afraid. But you are not afraid. You are informed. You have watched this pattern play out so many times that you recognize it in its infancy. You do not need to wait for the crash. You have already seen the trajectory. And so you are left with a choice that is not really a choice. Participate in a relationship you know will fail, or leave before it fails, and be accused of sabotaging something that could have worked. Either way, you are alone. Either way, you are misunderstood. This is the seer's curse, to be right, and to be alone in your rightness. But here is what reframes everything. The seer's curse is also the seer's protection. Every relationship you walked away from before it imploded, you were right. Every person you saw clearly in the first hour and chose not to pursue, you were right. Every time you were called cold, detached, or impossible to please, you were protecting yourself from connections that would have broken you. The gift of the seer is discernment. Not every knowing needs to be acted upon. Not every pattern needs to be named aloud. But your capacity to perceive another person's invisible architecture is not a flaw. It is navigation. You are not too much. You are unmistakable. And the question is not, how do I stop knowing? The question is, what do I do with the knowing? Because you cannot unknow, but you can choose differently. You can choose to stay present, even when you have already seen the ending. You can choose to value the relationship for what it is now, rather than grieve what it will not become. You can choose someone not because they are perfect, but because their specific brokenness is something you are willing to accompany. This is the threshold the Sigma, the first NFJ seer, must cross, from prophecy to presence, from knowing to being. The person who can love you is not someone you cannot read. That person does not exist. The person who can love you is someone you choose to stay with, even after you have mapped them completely. Someone whose patterns and wounds and limitations you see clearly, and you decide consciously that you are willing to walk that territory together. Not because you are blind, but because you are awake, and you have chosen presence over prediction. The seer does not need to become less perceptive. The seer needs to become more embodied, to drop out of the head and into the moment, to stop living 3 years ahead and come back to now. This is the work. Not to stop seeing, but to see and stay anyway. If you recognized yourself in this, I want to know, has your knowing ever cost you a relationship that might have been real, or has it saved you from connections that would have destroyed you? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe if you are part of the Power and Myth community, where your depth is not too much. It is an initiation. Until next time, find your power, know your myth.